Right now?
Hello? Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Howdy. And thank you for coming to this vigil. Can everyone hear me properly? Yeah. Okay. So, as you probably know, this is a vigil to honor Palestinian students and teachers who have been killed in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. We are holding this vigil in front of the OTPP because of our pension that is invested in weapons manufacturers that are directly profiting from the deaths of Palestinians. But before we begin, I just want to remind everyone that if there are any security issues at all, and hopefully there won't be, we do have marshals, so you are to direct those issues to the marshals. And marshals, can you just wave your hands? They're wearing the fluorescent jackets. And the other thing is, if we have any members of the press, you are welcome. But we do have media spokespeople, and if you are approached by media and you are not a media spokesperson, please redirect the press to them. So media spokespeople, just wave your hands so people know, all right? And the other thing is, it's already happening, is to get these candles lit, and so that we can begin the vigil. And I'm going to pass it over to Gord, who's going to start.
Thank you, Amina. My name is Gord Doctorow, and I'm a retired Ontario secondary school teacher and a member of Independent Jewish Voices. In my 26 years of service, I was inspired by the notion that teachers were helping to shape society's future by instilling new generations with the ability to become critical thinkers, competent adults, and forces for social justice. That could only happen with safe schools, which put a premium on supporting differences, learning from history on how to develop a better society. And then I learned about scholasticide in occupied Palestine. According to Scholars Against the War in Palestine, 11 Palestinian universities have been bombed. Around 370 schools have been destroyed. 90,000 Palestinian students can't continue their studies in university education. 620,000 students can't go to school. 231 educators and academics were killed, and 707 were injured. 4,237 students, the kind of people we taught, were killed, and more than 7,800 were injured. That is the reality of scholasticide. That is the reality of the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. Never did I think that I would be complicit in supporting a system like that in occupied Palestine, which devalues human life and destroys material and educational opportunities. And yet, as a shareholder in the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, I find myself involuntarily complicit in the very opposite of what I dedicated to my life to as a teacher. In the spirit of acknowledging our gratitude to the original peoples of this land, we need to begin by recognizing that Toronto is the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. A land acknowledgement is significant and makes a coherent connection between the ongoing genocide in Palestine and settler colonialism across Turtle Island. The inability of Canadian institutions to recognize this connection has exposed our society's continued racism and hypocrisy here at home. We are here because we refuse to let truth, critical thinking, and our hope for a just future to be buried under the rubble of colonialism.
Here, here.
Amen.
Thank you, Gord. So my name is Amina, and I am a current Ontario teacher. And as Gord has eloquently stated, we are here because we are outraged that an educator's pension plan is invested in weapons manufacturers that are directly profiting off of this genocide, off of an illegal occupation of Palestine, and as the ICJ calls, an Israeli apartheid state. We've been pressuring the OTPP to divest from these unethical weapons investments for over a year now. And two major education unions in Ontario, the OSSTF and ETFO, representing over 140,000 members, have both passed divestment motions against any and all investments in weapons and or war. In the latest SEC filing, it shows that OTPP has removed its investments in Northrop Grumman and Textron, but it is still invested in Honeywell, still invested in Booz Allen Hamilton, and still invested in Leidos. And Honeywell it's been documented that Honeywell missile parts have been found in the rubble of a UN school that has been attacked by Israel, a UN school in central Gaza's Nusayrat refugee camp. So there's proof that these investments are directly linked to these deaths, linked to over 18,000 children that have been killed, have been martyred in this genocide. And if you look at our banner here, you can see that the equation to how many school buses this equals, just to give you a sense, to bring it home, to understand what that means for us here as well. So this vigil marks our grief and outrage at our complicity. Gord will be introducing our 5 speakers. After our 5 speakers, we will unravel the scroll, and the scroll holds all the names of students, young children that have been killed in this ongoing genocide, and then we will have a moment of silence. So I'm passing it over to Gord.
Thank you, Amina. So our first speaker, it's my privilege to call upon our first speaker, Nadia Shufani, a Palestinian Canadian and an Ontario teacher. Thank you, Nadia. Where are you?
Running late.
Oh, she's running. Okay. Well, then I'm going to go on to a second speaker. Is Nadine Nazir from Toronto Palestinian Families. All right. How about Michelle Monk from Toronto Jewish Families? Where is she?
I did see her. Right there. Right here.
Oh, there you are. You want me to hold this for you, or we can do that?
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Monk, and I'm a parent of 2 Jewish TDSB students, and I am also a teacher in the TDSB. I am a member of Toronto Jewish Families, a grassroots organization of parents of Jewish TDSB students. We work in coalition with Toronto Palestinian Families to challenge anti-Palestinian racism and anti-Semitism within the Toronto District School Board. As a teacher, I brought Bill Gleed, a Holocaust survivor, into my class. Bill spoke to my class about his experiences as a 13-year-old boy in Serbia, of being led from his home to the train that would take his family to Auschwitz. The streets were lined with acquaintances, neighbors, and schoolmates. They all remained silent as he and all the Jews of his village were led away. This story was a clarion call of the obligation to name and respond to injustice. As Toronto Jewish Families, people who have experienced hate and exclusion and erasure, we have a moral responsibility to work for inclusion, to uphold human rights, and to call out these same harms when we see them. We deeply believe the lesson of the Holocaust is that we must defend the rights of every person, never again never again for anyone. As a parent, when I give my children an allowance, I ask them to divide their money into 3 piles, one to save, one to spend, and one to share. And as a teacher, when I receive my paycheck, I do the same. I save some money for my children's education, I spend some on feeding and housing my family, and I share some with others. More than 14,500 children have been killed so far in Gaza alone. That is an inconceivable number of innocent lives. The fact that my money invested in the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan is profiting from the death of thousands of children and the destruction of their schools is unconscionable. Last week, many Jews celebrated the holiday of Tu B'Shvat, the New Year of the Trees. We celebrate Tu B'Shvat by honoring different kinds of fruits that are hard on the outside and soft on the inside, like oranges and grapefruits, fruits that are soft on the outside and hard on the inside, like olives and dates, and fruits that we can eat completely, like strawberries. We also express gratitude for the earth that sustains us. Israeli bombings, supported in part by the investments held by the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan, have destroyed not only homes, schools, and hospitals, but also valuable farmland, crops, fruit, and olive trees. In Beit Lahia, once known for plump, juicy strawberries that locals fondly called red gold, Israeli bulldozers and heavy machinery have systematically razed fields, reducing them to dust. Israel's attacks have destroyed date trees and olive trees that were over 70 years old. Khan Yunis in the south used to produce the bulk of Gaza's citrus, including oranges and grapefruits. Israeli forces have decimated Khan Yunis's orchards and farmlands. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians face starvation. The Israeli army, aided by our investments, is destroying the ability of Palestinians to feed themselves now and in the future. Here in Ontario, many schools have snack programs because we know that learning cannot happen when students are hungry. It is unforgivable that while we feed our students' bodies and nurture their minds, we are funding the exact opposite in Palestine. Not only are children and their families dying, but the ability of the remaining children to survive and thrive is being removed. On this holiday of Tu B'Shvat, I call on Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan to divest from the destruction of schools, homes, and farms of Palestinians. As one of the world's largest pension plans, the OTPP is well positioned to have an immense social impact. We have so much potential to do so much good. As teachers committed to the health and well-being of all children, our pension funds should be invested in building houses, in developing green technology, and in creating schools and hospitals that educate and nurture children. We should not be profiting from companies that kill children. We should be investing in farms and farmland and supporting the people's capacity to feed themselves. In the words of Isaiah, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.
Wow. Thank you, Michelle. That was a really powerful speech. Of course, it represents a Jewish position that is different from what we are being presented with as mainstream. Believe me, they're not mainstream. They are downstream. Okay. So, my next speaker is Nadine Nazir from Toronto Palestinian Families.
Thank you so much to the organizers for organizing this important gathering today and for inviting me to speak. Today, I am speaking to you on behalf of Toronto Palestinian Families, a grassroots group of over 250 families in Toronto who are deeply concerned about anti-Palestinian racism at the Toronto District School Board. I'd like to start by sharing a memory. One of my most vivid memories of pre-genocide Gaza is an image that I saw of a young girl huddled over a candle in a pitch black room doing her homework. The electricity was sparse due to Israel's siege of Gaza, but despite this, her parents, like so many others, found a way to provide her with what she needed to learn. I often think about this little girl and I wonder Is she one of the at least 17,492 Palestinian children that were killed in Israel's genocide of Gaza? Are her parents still alive to provide for her and to teach her about the importance of education? For us as Palestinians, education is not just a path to a better job. It is life itself. It is the cornerstone of our identity and survival. Education is our future. Palestinian children, like all children, should have the right to live, to learn, and to dream.
Hear, hear.
The tragic reality is that Israel's genocide in Gaza has turned the future of the children who have survived into a nightmare. According to the United Nations, Israel has committed scholasticide, the systematic destruction of an entire education system. They have destroyed every university, countless schools, and taken the lives of thousands of educators and students. Today in Gaza, surviving teachers are forced to teach in tents, in the freezing cold, atop rubble, with empty stomachs, all while grieving members of their own families.
Shame! Shame!
Meanwhile, in the West Bank, Israel continues to target and kill some of our brightest minds. Just 2 weeks ago, Israeli soldiers took the life of Dr. Sundos Shalabi, a 23-year-old PhD in cell and molecular biology who was 8 months pregnant. Her specialty was breast cancer genetics. Her death is part of the larger campaign to kill or detain Palestinian intellectuals in an attempt to rob us of our greatest hopes for a better tomorrow for all people. But the brutality doesn't stop there, and sadly, I could speak to all of you for hours and hours about the children who were killed by sniper bullets to the skulls, the children who can't go to school because Israeli soldiers won't let them pass through checkpoints, the tens of thousands of children missing limbs, the tens of thousands of orphans who have been left to fend for themselves. But what I must focus on is how this suffering is connected to what is happening here in Ontario. As Palestinian parents, we send our children to school every day knowing that their teachers unwittingly are complicit in the widespread killing of Palestinian children.
Silence is complicity!
Their pension contributions are funding the companies that profit off of the death and dismemberment of Palestinian children and the destruction of schools, homes, and entire communities. As we send our children off to school, we carry the heavy burden of knowing that those who are educating our children are sustaining the very system that is tearing apart the future of Palestinian youth simply on the basis of their employment. I know that the educators of Ontario do not want to be complicit in this, but the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan has given them no choice. We know that companies like Honeywell, Leidos, Northrop Grumman, and Textron have played a role in Israel's scholasticide. Their products include bombs, missiles, and military aircraft, and they're being used to carry out acts of violence against our children. These companies profit from the destruction of schools, homes, and lives. When Ontario teachers, who are entrusted with the education and mentorship of future generations, contribute to a pension plan that sustains these companies, it sends a deeply troubling message. It tells Palestinian children that their lives do not matter. It tells us very clearly that profit comes before the lives of our children. This cannot be allowed to continue. The Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan must not stand on the wrong side of history. It must withdraw investments from companies that profit from genocide, illegal occupation, and scholasticide. The pension plan must reflect the values of those who entrust their future to it. It should invest in peace, it should invest in education, and it should invest in the future of every child regardless of where they are born. The call to action is simple. The Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan must divest from weapons manufacturers complicit in the killing and oppression of Palestinian children. Now, to Joe Taylor, the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan president, stop funding the killing of children who look just like my own. This is a plea for Palestinian parents to divest from Honeywell, Leidos, Northrop Grumman, and Textron. And finally, if I could have a candle for the young girl in pre-genocide, in pre-genocide Gaza, who may or may not be alive, who was huddled over a candle in the pitch black during the siege just to try to do her homework. This candle is for her.
Thank you, Nadia. That was overwhelming.
Thank you.
So we have Nigel next. No? Yeah. Oh no. Yes, you're next. I'm sorry. I got it wrong.
That's okay. I know it's. Hi everyone. Thank you all for being here. This is amazing. I thought in this very cold weather, a lot of people might not show up. So this is great. Thank you so much for being here. And definitely we're all here to stand together to honor our martyred students and our martyred colleagues, our martyred education workers who are murdered by the genocidal state of Israel. My name is Nadia. I'm an active Ontario teacher, a community organizer, and a longtime activist with the Palestine Solidarity Movement. I'm Palestinian. I'm a second generation of the Nakba, born in a refugee camp in Lebanon. So being here and watching this genocide unfold for 15 months, it really ties into heart. Living in Lebanon, we lived through Israeli atrocities, so much Israeli atrocities, and lost loved ones in Lebanon. We lost loved ones over the 76 years of the illegal occupation, every occupation is illegal, the occupation of Palestine, and we lost loved ones in the last 15 months of the genocide in Gaza. And this is a genocide that's really live-streamed. Shame on the whole world that allowed this to happen. So we're here to mourn, honor loved souls. 471 days of brutal genocide left us, based on Gaza's governmental report dated in January 2025, left us with more than 18,000 children martyred, left us with 6,000 children with 1 or 2 limbs amputated, left us with more than 35 children orphaned, lost one or both parents, left us with 240 newborn babies born and killed during this genocide, 858 less than 1 year old, left us with 12,800 students being murdered by this genocidal state of Israel. It left us with 1,600 families with all members wiped out of the registry. It left us with 136 schools and universities bombed and completely destroyed. It left us with 355 schools and universities partially destroyed. Left us with 785,000 students deprived of education, bear with me. I know it's a lot of numbers, but we as Palestinians, as humans, we are not numbers.
Here. Absolutely.
This also left us with 959 teachers and education workers who were killed during these 15 months of genocide. 149 academics and university professors and researchers murdered. Of course, there is a lot more. I just focused on the education sector, on children, on teachers, schools, universities. So all this and a lot more was enabled with the complicity of our governments and our institutions funding and profiting from investing in weapons and war machineries. We are here to hold the OTPP, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, accountable and to demand that OTPP divest from all weapon companies. Our message and our demand is one and clear. Ontario teachers must divest from weapon manufacturers profiting from Palestinian deaths, from Lebanese deaths, from all deaths of humans all over.
Divest now! And war forever!
Since this genocide started, we came together as teachers of conscience, as human beings with moral obligation to humanity. We started writing and sending letters to the OTPP since December 2023. They were ignored. Those letters were ignored. We've shown up at the AGM to demand transparency and disclosure of whether our pension money is being invested in weapons manufacturing. OTPP President Joe Taylor refused to confirm publicly non-investments in weapon manufacturers selling jets and bombs to the Zionist state used in slaughtering tens of thousands of Palestinians. We met with the plan. There was in the meeting the Chief Pension Officer, Senior Managing Director and Head of Sustainable Investing, Managing Director of Marketing and Communications. Despite our message and our demand and the ICC warrants and the ICJ declaration of possible genocide, despite UN experts saying that companies invested are complicit in war crimes and crimes against humanity, despite all this, they made no promises, and said their primary concern is public reputation. Oh hell, public reputation, here we are. What public reputation? We passed resolutions, written more letters, had a phone zap event and made hundreds of phone calls. Still, the plan ignored us. We made a video with our demands, still ignored. So we're here today as part of an escalation plan. We're here today with rage and warning, to honor children and colleagues and to say we refuse to be ignored. It is not complicated. It is very simple. The source of all these deaths is the war machine profiting from death and destruction, which is funded and fueled by investments of complicit organizations like our plan. So we refuse to be complicit. We will not stop. We will not rest until the plan divests. We are leaving this memorial built with our grief and our rage. To remind OTPP President Joe Taylor that we will never, never forget these children. We will never forget our colleagues who are killed by his genocidal investments. I'd like to end by saying glory to those martyrs. Glory to every martyr that had fallen on the land of Gaza, on the land of the West Bank, on the land of Palestine. Glory to those martyrs, healing to the wounded, freedom to the abducted, and shame, shame on all those silent and complicit who allowed this to happen for 15 months.
Shame! Shame! Shame!
And a commitment for we as educators, as humans actually, as humans, we commit to continue to build up the pressure until the plan divests from more deaths and crimes against humanity. This close.
Taylor gets all that money and he ignores us. Maybe he should get fired. Anyway, so our next speaker is Nigel Barrett, Vice President of the Elementary Teachers of Toronto.
Thank you. That's right. My name is Nigel Barrett, and I teach here in Toronto District School Board. Over the years, I've taught every school, every grade except for kindergarten. I have a 9-year-old who attends a TDSB public school. Every day, I see firsthand how educators and education workers hold our system together, not just in our classrooms, but in hallways, libraries, playgrounds, nurturing the next generation with care and commitment. And that's exactly why I'm here today. Because as educators, we have a duty, not just to teach, not just to support, but to stand up for what is right, to stand up for our students, wherever they are in the world, and to refuse to be complicit in their suffering. More than 16,000 children and students have been killed in Gaza. 16,000. Classrooms turned to rubble, libraries erased, nearly 80% of the schools destroyed. The UN has called this scholasticide, the systemic destruction of an entire education system. More than 300 teachers have been killed, almost 1,000 more wounded. Teachers like us, who showed up to work, believing in the power of education, only to be targeted and erased.
Shame! Shame! Shame!
And while the world watches this horror unfold, while parents grieve the loss of their children, while students are left with no schools, no homes, no future, our own Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, is investing in the very companies fueling this destruction. Our pension plan holds investments in Honeywell and Leidos, companies that provide weapons and essential components to the Israeli army. This isn't speculation, this is fact. And despite letters, despite resolutions, despite meetings, and the undeniable weight of international law, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan refuses to divest. Their message is clear. Their bottom line is worth more than the lives of these children. But we are here today to say, not in our name. We're here to say that there is no retirement fund, no investment return, no financial security that could ever justify complicity in war crimes. We are here to say that teachers, Ontario's 140,000 educators, do not stand for this. We have passed resolutions, we have made our demands, and yet the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan thinks that it can wait us out. They think they can dismiss our voices, but we are teachers. We teach history. We know how this story ends. The arc of justice bends only because people refuse to let it snap. Because people refuse to give up. Because people like us, people like me and you, we show up. So we stand here today in mourning, but also in resistance. We will keep showing up. We will keep pressuring the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. We will keep demanding divestment. We will keep making it impossible for them to ignore us. And I ask you, every person here, every person watching, every person listening, to stand with us, sign the petitions, call the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, spread the word, show up again and again, and so they have no choice but to divest. Because education is meant to build futures, not fund their destruction. And as teachers, as parents, as human beings, we will not be silent. Thank you.
Joe Taylor.
Nigel, that was fantastic. Thank you. So, our next speaker is Vincent Wong, who's an assistant professor at the University of Windsor, and I hope that you will find him as powerful as all the other speakers.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for the organizers and all of you here today for your labor and for inviting me here today. I was asked to speak a little bit about international law as it applies to the situation in Palestine and the legal obligations of the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. As a law professor, I teach international human rights law, or at least I try to. I was recently a research associate at the International Human Rights Program at the University of Toronto Law School, until CIJA, the Center for Israeli-Jewish Affairs, intervened in the hiring of our director because of her research on international law with respect to the occupation of Palestine. In order to do this, they used a sitting judge, who's also happened to be the nephew of Larry Tannenbaum, in order to make a call as a donor, as an influential alumni, to make sure that their concerns were heard about any criticism of Israel through our International Human Rights Program at the law school. But from a legal analysis, to be very clear with you all, the law is actually very, very clear here. Divestment from Israeli war crimes and apartheid is not only a moral and ethical obligation, it is a distinct legal obligation. And to the extent that they continue these investments knowingly, these investments are illegal. Now, the illegality of the situation in Palestine in international law has been clear for over 100 years, ever since at least the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which created a British imperial mandate to recognize Jewish national rights in Palestine while erasing the national rights of the majority non-Jewish population, a gross violation of the right to self-determination. And on through to the 1948 Nakba, which displaced the majority of the Palestinian population from their native lands, including in Gaza. Since then, we have witnessed blatant and continuous violations of international law by Israel as against Palestinians. These include long-standing violations of core tenets of international law, including decades-long illegal occupation, as confirmed by the International Court of Justice 2024 occupation decision, as well as apartheid policies of systemic racial discrimination and oppression against Palestinians under Israeli dominion, and as Israel continues to annex more and more land as part of their settler colonial projects. These are both egregious international law and international criminal law violations. In addition, since October 2023, we have seen this ongoing colonial violence mutate and accelerate into a genocide in Gaza, which the ICJ has already recognized is plausibly occurring in terms of genocide and has issued immediate orders to Israel and third parties to stop it. Violations of international human rights and humanitarian law have escalated into a never-ending series of war crimes and crimes against humanity, intentional and reckless carpet bombing, using multiple times the amount of ordnance as was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Whole-scale destruction of essential and life-saving civilian infrastructure, including housing, shelter, health, education, government and law institutions, water and sanitation. Using the siege of Gaza to withhold life-saving humanitarian aid and food, creating state-sanctioned conditions of starvation and thirst. Systemic torture and rape of captives. The Gaza genocide continues to spill over into aggression and destruction in other areas, particularly that of the West Bank and southern Lebanon. In this context, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan Investment Board has an institutional obligation as an investor under the 1948 Genocide Convention, the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, and customary international law. Now, this obligation manifests in two ways. The first is that directors and officers may be criminally liable for their complicity crimes, such as materially aiding and abetting the commission of genocide and war crimes, and may be prosecuted for those crimes, including potentially private prosecutions, where the Canadian state is unwilling to actually enforce their own laws. The second is that of tort or civil liability. In 2019, the Supreme Court of Canada affirmed in Nevson that corporations can be civilly liable for violations of customary international law, specifically forced labor and torture, in Canadian domestic courts. By knowingly or being willfully blind to the complicity in facilitating genocide, war crimes, and severe human rights abuses, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan could be sued civilly in Canada for complicity in violations of customary international law by those who are directly affected, including perhaps some who are present in the audience here today. My friends, I'd like to say one more thing. I did my undergrad schooling at Raman Commerce at University of Toronto down the street in specialty in finance and economics. Now that program is a feeder school to investment managers, including that here in Ontario Teacher Pension Plan Investment Board. Many of my own classmates eventually worked in this investment board. And so I want to highlight how meaningful it is to protest here on the Ontario Teacher Pension Plan Investment Board, which is played a pioneering role in institutionalizing private equity into Canadian public goods. Let me say that again. Institutionalizing private equity into Canadian public goods. We have seen students all over the world, as well as in Toronto, fight for their universities to divest from the arms trade and military and policing investments, especially in Palestine. But in Canada, the widespread introduction of private equity into university endowment and pension fund management was foreshadowed by its initial entry into public sector pension asset management. And the first mover of this establishment was in 1990, Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. Teachers in Ontario have had a pension plan since 1917, incidentally the year of the Balfour Declaration. But for many decades was run as an extension of the Ontario Treasury, with investments limited to Ontario government bonds. This changed significantly with the institution of the investment board in 1990, where a substantial amount of the pension fund was moved into higher risk, higher return investments such as derivatives, private equity, venture capital, hedge funds, and real estate. And this institutional pivot was reflected in Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, or CPPIB, as well as in post-secondary adopters. And who was the first one to move there? The University of Toronto, 10 years later in 2000. With their own professional financial management unit, the University of Toronto Asset Management. By funneling money into of hedge funds, public universities are incongruously supporting the anti-social policies that hedge fund managers are notorious for rallying behind. Rolling back corporate regulation, slashing the minimum wage, eliminating pensions, privatizing public schools, and trammeling unions, as well as investing in weapons manufacturing that profits from genocide. The monstrous message, this is monstrous, that is being sent to us as education workers is to sit down and shut up, because the security of our benefits and our retirements depend on massive profits that the military and policing industrial complex extracts from surveilling, policing, detaining, controlling, and if necessary, bombing and massacring colonized peoples. But we are here together to say that we refuse this imperialist bribe. We refuse the idea that our security is tied to accepting profits from apartheid, from ethnic cleansing, from the bombing of schools and hospitals, from children being reduced to grocery bags of limbs. We refuse to allow private equity to drag us workers into complicity with genocide. We will see a free Palestine in our lifetimes, and we will see Gaza's children live free of terror and be able to have the opportunity to live normal lives in freedom and dignity. Free Palestine, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Professor Wong, for that acute analysis, passionate. And it seems to me we might have our next steps outlined with a criminal pursuing perhaps litigation. As we move to the end of this vigil, I would like us to just reflect a moment on our lit candle, and we've had many of our speakers talk about this symbol. That we're holding this candle as a symbol of remembrance as resistance. And I'm echoing this. This was already mentioned by many of the speakers. But we are also holding it as a symbol of our individual accountability as teachers and educators. In connection with, the connection between memory and resistance is something that it's very important for us to participate in making that connection in our classes with our colleagues. Because we forfeit any kind of legitimacy in our classrooms if we remain silent. It's already been said today that it's our ethical and cultural responsibility to fight for collective justice, peace, and freedom, even in the face of growing repression. And it works. Collective organizing works. The BDS movement works. So let us not stop and let us remember. They won't tell us that, but we know it works. So I also want to say that, even after they take down the physical manifestation of our memorial, which we will be leaving at the base there, they can't erase our collective imprint. Okay, that's our collective voices, our collective resistance. And I wanted to just end this little bit quoting Macklemore. I don't know if anyone's seen his recent video. He says, "You can bomb a mosque, but you can't bomb fate. You can kill people, but resistance grows in the wake." I felt that those were very powerful words. Billy, I think it's you who has the scroll. Whoever has the scroll, could they come forward? We are now going to unravel the scroll, and the scroll lists all the names of Palestinian children that have been martyred in this ongoing genocide in Gaza. It is over 300 feet long. And as it unravels, it starts with the names of Palestinian children who are 16 years of age, and it ends with Palestinian babies. It is 300 feet long. It took an hour only to get to the names of Palestinian children who are 1 year old. Let that sink in. So what I would like us to do is have everyone participate, because I think we'll need all hands on the scroll, and to build a line, right? As we're unraveling the scroll, people can try and navigate their candle in the scroll. And so as it's unraveling, people are holding it in a line, and the line builds as it unravels. And just to be mindful, because it's paper and it's tape, and it's very basically delicate and precious as lives those names represent, so handle with care, so we can try and keep it together if possible. And as we are unraveling the scroll, as it's already starting, we are going to listen to a song written and it's sung by Natalie Fashik, a Palestinian musician and community organizer. Now, once the scroll has been unraveled and the song is ended, we will end with a moment of silence, and we will be holding these children's names in our hands as we have this moment of silence.
In the history of struggles for freedom and justice, Natalie Fashik's glorious voice lifts up our souls in a collective spirit of love and life. As we end this vigil, let us create our memorial at the base of this OTPP pillar. I ask for people to leave their candles, paper flowers, and other remembrances underneath the OTPP logo. Thanks to the choir Samudna Protest Choir for their participation. Thank you for joining in this vigil. If you have not signed the petition letter to OTPP, please go to World Beyond War or grab a flyer with the link to do so. And a reminder that any security issues should be directed to our marshals, and press issues directed to our media contacts. Be sure to leave together in groups or in pairs so that everyone arrives home safely.
It's a powerful moment here, so I believe that we're going to hold it. It's cold, but I feel like people are wanting just to hold this moment a little longer. Am I getting that sense right from everyone?
Yes.
Okay. And as you're leaving, but we will now be creating the memorial at the base of this pillar here. And please leave your remembrances, your candles, any paper flowers, anything that you would leave as a memorial. And as this is happening, we do have a choir that will be singing just as part of that transition. Great.